Welcome to Cattle Connect, your insight into Alabama's beef cattle industry. I'm your host, Erin Beasley, and this is Cattle Connect, brought to you by the Alabama Cattlemen's Association. Well, welcome back into the Cattle Connect podcast, cattlemen. Today, we welcome a special guest into our studio, and honestly, she's probably no stranger to you guys. Many of you may be graduates of the College of Agriculture at Auburn, or some of you might be like me and you're a graduate of the Department of Animal Sciences. Well, if you are, you will find today's guest pretty interesting because she will have the impact on the future success of the department, as well as within the College of Agriculture. So today we welcome the new Department Head of Animal Sciences, Dr. Kim Mullenix, to the podcast so that you can get to know her, and she is going to share her vision for the department. So welcome, Kim.
Thanks, Erin. Glad to be here today. Appreciate the invite.
Absolutely. And we know that, our members, they are very familiar with you. A lot of them, you're no stranger to the Cattlemen's Association. Most recently, you served as Beef Cattle Extension Specialist for our state. And so you have had an opportunity to interact with a lot of cattle producers along the countryside. But, a lot of them may not remember or just may not know your background. So let's just start. Give us a little bit of info as to where you came from and kind of how you got to the position of Beef Cattle Extension Specialist, which you've served in for the last 10 years.
Sure, I'd be glad to share some of my background with you. So I'm originally from Newnan, Georgia, which is about 45 minutes southwest of Atlanta. And I grew up on a small beef cattle operation there. My parents were really involved in the agriculture industry growing up, with my dad being a leader in the Georgia Cattlemen's Association. And really, I grew up going to things like extension meetings, cattlemen's meetings, as well as Farm Bureau meetings. And that began my exposure to the agriculture industry as a whole at a young age. But what ultimately led me to Auburn, first as a student and then now back as an employee, was in high school. I was very interested in science, and I thought maybe I ultimately wanted to pursue a career in something like pharmacy. And I began looking at different college programs around the Southeast, visiting colleges. And it was on a recruiting event to Auburn that I met with our academic advisor in the College of Ag, as well as our undergraduate program coordinator in animal sciences at the time, Dr. Dale Coleman, about animal sciences as a possible track to be able to go as a pre-medical route, pre-pharmacy, or pre-veterinary medicine route. And I thought to myself that major sounded interesting, one, because it did have ties to my agricultural background, but also maybe it would be a way to diversify myself as a student that may ultimately want to pursue that medical career. And really that story is a lot like what we see with some of our current students, that they may come into our program kind of with this expectation that they would like to pursue that route, but over time they become more exposed to these opportunities that are available for them in the animal science industry. So I began my academic career then at Auburn in 2004 as an undergraduate student in that program. And during my time in that program, I became very involved in extracurricular activities as well as undergraduate research in the department. And that opportunity is really what opened my eyes to the potential things that I could do with an animal sciences degree. And I began doing undergraduate research with Dr. Russ Munafering. And he was a ruminant nutritionist that did a lot of grazing cattle research around the state. Working in that program as an undergraduate led me ultimately to the decision that I wanted to pursue a master's degree in ruminant nutrition, focusing on that forage-based management systems concept. I did a research project at the Wiregrass Research and Extension Center, and then graduated from that program. And by this point, I had decided that I wanted to go all the way and pursue a postgraduate degree, PhD at the University of Florida in agronomy with a focus on forage management systems. So after I graduated from my master's at Auburn, I moved to Florida and I did my PhD there. During that time, I was able to gain a lot of new perspectives, meet a lot of new people, and really kind of do some soul searching about what I ultimately wanted to do following graduation, knowing that I probably wanted to work in academia, but what did that really look like for me? And close to the end of my program at Florida, there was a job opportunity at Auburn that opened back up, and it was the position formerly held by Dr. Darrell Rankins, extension beef cattle nutritionist for our state. He had retired, his position came open, and I applied and ultimately came back to Auburn And that's what led me down the path of where we are today, even in this shift as a role as department head. So Auburn's been a part of my background for many years and continues to be.
That's awesome. That's a great story of, being able to, take one of our own, so to speak. And we are sure glad that you got to, come in 10 years ago and start serving the producers of this state. I know in that time period you had a lot of highlights, as beef cattle extension specialist. Maybe just run us through, what are some things that stick out as some, high points of that time in your career?
Sure. Well, I really love serving the state as a beef cattle extension specialist, and I feel very strongly about the extension mission and how that ties into the overall land-grant university mission, which is we have 3 mission areas: teaching, research, and extension. And that's what makes us unique, in that we can take the research that we're doing in our department and in our college, and we have a formal pathway to be able to get that information out to the public through extension. And I feel really passionate about that I wanted to be able to create a program that had very applied research that could be used by the farmers in our state. And so by running that applied research program, working with our extension team, specifically our regional extension agents and county extension coordinators in the state, to get that information to producers, and then developing resources that producers can use for reference to learn more about best management practices related to forage-based beef systems in the state. So some of the key highlights I really see that came out of that time in serving as an extension specialist was, one, we established a really good set of field days that we continue to do to this day at our outlying research centers in the state. And the idea is just to be able to bring our producers, but also those from campus, our students, our faculty and staff, to those centers to be able to see the current research that's going on there, and then allow producers to make decisions about which of those practices might be best fits for their respective operations. The second thing we see is that we developed a lot of content that can be used both for extension meetings or programs that we might use at a county cattlemen's meeting, or with a standalone extension meeting that producers might come to. And during the time of kind of the COVID-19 pandemic, the way we did that really kind of shifted as well. And that's a marked point that I would want to bring out too, is that we went from kind of a traditional, mostly in-person approach to how we do this education to more of a blended approach, where we use both in-person as well as online programs to be able to get that content out to our producers. So we really focused on that time of building out our resources so that producers had reference items through things like our Alabama Beef Handbook. We have several online courses, both for beef cattle as well as forage management systems. And then having that reference website through extension where they can go and find that additional information. So really seeing the program growth over time, I would say, was really rewarding. And then hearing from people about them using those resources and them being valuable resources to them as they make decisions for their respective operation.
Yeah, I know, just interacting with members and, using some of those resources with like our Young Cattlemen's Leadership Program, even our junior cattlemen. I mean, there's a lot of information out there and a lot of resources available for our folks to be able to be productive in this industry. And that's thanks to the work of extension. That's a direct result. And so we definitely thank you for the things that you've done in that. And, I don't think there's anybody that would doubt you're passionate about that role in extension. And so, thinking back to last fall when Dr. Greene, after almost 20 years as department head, which thinking back, that was 2004. That was actually the year you and I started in the Department of Animal Sciences at Auburn. So
that's right.
So we've known Dr. Greene a long time, and he certainly, served and was a great department head. He steps down last fall. I mean, maybe walk us through, you're passionate about what you do in extension. What led you ultimately to say, you know what, I think I'm going to throw my name in the hat for this versus maybe being the boots on the ground that you've been so far in your career?
Right. That's a great question. And I remember the day that Dr. Greene announced to us that he was going to step down from his position. And I first just would say that he was a great department head for us, provided a lot of strong leadership for our department over the years, and really laid that foundation for our department and the potential successes we have to go forward because of his leadership role as department head. And so to me, when he announced that he was stepping down, I thought to myself, well, this is something that I would be interested in, but I didn't know it was going to be right now, right? But of course, as with anything in life, you never really know when some of those opportunities are going to come forward. And I thought to myself that I really wanted to apply for this position because ultimately I love Auburn and I wanted to be able to make a difference for both our department and our college as a whole. And I think the connections and the relationships that I've been able to build through extension really showed me that that could be a potential passion of mine, because I felt like I could be a good connection link for us to the communities of Alabama and really enhance the way that we are serving our state from Auburn University's standpoint. And that's ultimately what led me to apply. And then, of course, I was fortunate enough to be selected for the position and be here today to start down that path.
Well, we're glad you did. I mean, we'll miss you on the extension front, but I think, there's a lot to be gained and a lot of reward with what you've decided to do. You obviously have kind of that servant's heart, which I think is important when you take on a big leadership role like you'll have now. So, well, let's kind of think ahead a little bit. I know you've got a lot of goals in this position. You've mentioned and all of us, recognize, Dr. Greene leaves behind a really good, firm foundation. And as somebody myself that got to kind of move into a leadership role from someone that left a firm foundation with Dr. Powell, we're kind of in a similar situation, just different time periods. But maybe talk to us a little bit, what are the plans in the next 5 to 10 years looking ahead? What are some of those goals that you hope to accomplish as department head?
Save the date. The 82nd Annual ACA Convention and Trade Show will be here before you know it. Join us in the heart of Birmingham, February 21st and 22nd, 2025. Be on the lookout for more information coming soon.
I would say going forward, just looking at some of the goals for the department, I'd break it down going back to look at those 3 mission areas for the university as a whole. And if we start with teaching and looking at our teaching program, we know that we've always had that good foundation in terms of our faculty and their connections with our students. That's really something that draws people into our program, is that relationship that the students and faculty have and knowing each other. And I think building upon that, but ensuring that we have that continuous pathway to the department and that we're creating more opportunities to grow our program would be a focus area for us. And what that looks like to me is that it would be us going forward and really creating these partnerships with community colleges in the state to be able to create a more formalized transfer pathway for students to come to Auburn University. And if we look across the state, within our rural communities especially, I think that step makes sense because first going to a community college, then coming to Auburn can help set those students up for success and kind of stair-step them into our program. And so that would be an area to start with in terms of getting students to Auburn University. Mm-hmm. The second within that teaching mission is to focus on growing our high-impact experiences that we offer to our students. Okay, so you might ask yourself, what is a high-impact experience? Right. That's actually where we're taking the students and they're taking what they've learned in the classroom, but then ultimately they are applying it and learning more about animal science industry opportunities. Okay, so that could look many different ways. It could be a study abroad, could be an internship, it'd be undergraduate research, or helping with one of our U programs like Beef U, Horse U, where they're organizing and leading a program and teaching the content as part of that course. So emphasizing those programs, I think, helps differentiate our program from other potential tracks, one, to vet school, but also to really help showcase what you can do with an animal science degree, right? And so I think increasing the number of opportunities that we have in those areas would be a focus area for me. From a research and extension standpoint, really to me, those two areas are very connected, and Auburn as a whole is emphasizing research as a priority area. And our research portfolio as an institution has grown tremendously, really, especially in the last 5 years, and we're on a continued trajectory for growth in that area. So with that, as we have faculty that are pursuing research grant opportunities, hiring graduate students, what that means for us on the extension side is that we see that connection increase. So there's more research that's being put out that can ultimately translate into practices for farmers. So those mission areas are connected, where our extension goal would be to maintain the quality of the programs that we have for extension, and then to really still be seen as the resource for scientific and unbiased information for our producers.
Yeah, I know that's really important, and certainly your bread and butter. And just as when I think back to us being students at Auburn, in animal science, there were so many of what you call those high impact experiences, and they really help shape you as a student. And that's the best time in life to get those, because you can take them and they prepare you for the real world and whatever it is that you go on and do.
Right. And they provide a variety of perspectives as well, right? So It allows you to get maybe a new experience and help you decide whether this is something you really want to do, or maybe you're interested in something else. So it gives you some valuable experience from that perspective as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, anytime you have opportunities, Kim, you're going to have challenges too. And so maybe, you've been in the system, you know what a lot of those challenges are. So maybe talk to us a little bit, what are those things that you see that, might present a roadblock, or just things that you're like, okay, I know we're going to hit this, but we're going to get through it too.
To me, one of the biggest challenges as it relates to roadblocks that we might encounter for our department really kind of mirrors what we see with the agriculture industry as a whole, and that people don't truly understand the value of agriculture. And I think that we have to be able to elevate our visibility within the department to help people understand the role of animal agriculture better and know what we do and how it ultimately relates to a sound and safe economy for the U.S. And so when we look at the role of agriculture, I think that we have an abundant and safe food supply for the U.S., but people take that for granted. Right. And so we have to educate them that really through training animal scientists and other individuals in the College of Agriculture through other majors too, that we create that pathway for students to ultimately go out and serve in the agriculture industry for us to be able to continue to have kind of those fruits that we see for a living here in the U.S. And that relates to resources that we have available for our department and how we can then meet those different mission areas that we've been talking about.
Well, that is definitely, something that I think all of us face, just, people understanding agriculture. I think it's going to continue to be a challenge for sure. I agree 100%.
Saddle up your buckaroos and bring them down to the museum. Located just 2 blocks from the state capitol, the museum provides fun and learning all in one stop as visitors explore Alabama's beef cattle industry. Learn more at bamabeef.org/themuseum.
All right, well, we've identified, your goals. We've talked a little bit about potential roadblocks, but it's also probably good if we think about, okay, let's go 15 years down the road. And we're looking back, we're saying, wow, we were able to do this or we were able to do that. So what do you think are the things that would be real successes that you could say, hey, we can hang our hat on this that we accomplished as a department under your leadership?
To me, I would start with our student programs. So both the undergraduate and graduate program, that we want to be able to see growth in both of those program areas, to know that we are training those graduates that are going to go out and take industry jobs and work in agriculture as a whole. And especially as it relates to our graduate student program, that's an area that I really want to emphasize and see us grow more, because those students, as I mentioned earlier, they also connect with those undergraduate students, and they can be a model to them to help teach them about what opportunities are available. Also, from the teaching standpoint, I think having that increased portfolio of those high impact experiences that we talked about from a research and extension perspective, I would see really having efficient use of our research facilities that we have both on campus and in the state, so that we're creating model systems that then ultimately our farmers want to utilize and be able to adopt management practices that they see on those farms. So modernizing those facilities to make sure that we're staying up with the times and being able to meet the demand to be fresh in terms of agriculture impacts that we can have from those.
So Kim, let's talk a little bit about our students. And, there are a lot of opportunities for our youth that are already involved in livestock programs. And they're definitely the ones that we want to think about from a recruiting standpoint and getting them into the department. So maybe what's your philosophy on getting them to Auburn?
Right. I would say exposure to livestock production systems and animal science as a whole is what we have to be able to create that connection for those students. One, to understand what our programs are, and then hopefully, two, be interested in majoring those ultimately when they choose a college and come to college. And to me, a connection point that we have that helps with that a lot is our youth livestock programs in the state. And over the last several years, we've really focused on trying to rebuild some of the capacity that's in those. Mm-hmm. But you may go to a livestock event in your respective county, whether that's with Extension or FFA or AJCA, and there you might see someone from the Department of Animal Sciences. It could be a student, it could be an employee of Auburn University, but them being involved in teaching and leading those programs really provides that connection for that student to then start thinking about, well, what does that person do at Auburn? And then what potential do I have to maybe do some of this that I'm doing in my county now? I could have a potential to do something like this as a college student, and it gets them interested in those programs. So I see great value in our youth livestock programs from that perspective.
And, hopefully that will lead them maybe to have an interest in coming to Auburn and serving, with some of the extracurricular activities that y'all have.
Right. The extracurricular activities, we have quite a few of those, whether that's clubs and organizations like Young Farmers, Collegiate Cattlemen's and Cattlewomen's, Auburn Block and Bridle. But also in the last couple of years, we've reestablished our judging program. So both from a livestock judging program standpoint, and then recently this year, Dr. Ariel Belk, one of our meat scientists, and her graduate student have established the meats judging program again. And there's really a lot of excitement surrounding both the livestock and the meats judging program from the alumni perspective. And I've already heard from many of those alumni about they're happy to see us rebuilding those programs and emphasizing those. So as we continue to publicize those and share about what's happening in those programs, I think that'll also increase that visibility for students to know what opportunities are available at Auburn University.
That's awesome. We are definitely, Cattlemen's Association is very excited about both the livestock judging and now, as we found out, the meats judging program coming back along. Well, let's just close out. We haven't talked yet about your family. So Kim, you're a busy gal. You've got this new role. You and your husband Daniel, y'all have a cattle operation. Tell us a little bit about the personal life.
I am. I'm very fortunate to have a great family support system. And my husband Daniel and I, we've been married for 13 years. We met at Auburn when he was a biosystems engineering major. He completed his bachelor's in biosystems engineering and then also has a master's in biosystems engineering. And after he completed that program, we moved to Florida during my PhD and then, of course, came back to Auburn for my extension position and now the department head role. And so he works for Greenpoint Ag. And he has been in that role with them since the time we were at Florida, and he is a manager for them. We have 3 kids. So my oldest is Davis. He's 8. Harper is 4, and then Mary Ellis is 2. We also have a farm in Lee County. We purchased the farm in 2020 and moved out there and initially started with a cow-calf operation, but now have a stocker cattle operation, and it really ties in with a lot of the interest I have as a beef cattle researcher, but also for us as a family, just allowing the kids to have that opportunity to grow up on a farm and be part of rural agriculture is something that we see as valuable and important. So we're busy, we're always on the go, but it's a great experience, and it really ties into both my professional as well as Daniel's professional life as a whole.
There's no doubt about it. You eat, sleep, and dream and think about agriculture all the time.
That's right. I'd say so.
Well, good. Well, Kim, we sure appreciate you taking the time. I know you're busy to come and join the podcast today. I think our listeners probably have very much enjoyed you sharing, some of your goals, some of your ambitions. From a cattleman's perspective, we couldn't be more excited to have you in this new role. We know what kind of experience you bring to this. We know, that you're passionate about what you're going to be doing, and you have our full support. You were at the board of directors meeting recently, and I think you probably felt the love there. But anything we can do from the Cattlemen's Association, just stakeholder standpoint, we're very excited to see what you do at the Department of Animal Sciences.
I appreciate it. It's been great working with the Cattlemen's Association as well as our other commodity partners in the state. I'm looking forward to continuing to do so in this new role.
All right, listeners, you know what that sound means. It's time for the Fast Facts. First fast fact is go ahead and mark your calendars. The ACA Convention and Trade Show will be February 21st and 22nd, 2025 in Birmingham. Registration opening is right around the corner, so be on the lookout for that, and make sure to get your hotel room and all of that as we enter into this month of November. Number 2, if you are interested in applying for an Alabama Cattlemen's Foundation scholarship, you need to be doing that right now if you haven't already. Those applications will close on November the 3rd, which is Sunday. Don't forget, the Cattlemen's Foundation will award over $100,000 this year in scholarships, so be sure to get your name in the hat for that. And lastly, something that's very, very important. Next week on Tuesday, November the 5th, it is Election Day, everyone. So we want all of our members to get out. You need to vote. It is a presidential election, but there's also a lot of very important local elections in our state. Make sure and exercise your right to vote. It is very important. November the 5th, Tuesday. Well, as we close out the podcast, I think I only know one thing to say, and that is War Eagle. And so if y'all are Bama people, I'm sorry you had to hear that, but I'm going to say War Eagle because I'm a graduate. I've enjoyed today's podcast, and we sure hope that you'll join us next week for another edition of the Cattle Connect podcast. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Cattle Connect, brought to you by the Alabama Cattlemen's Association. Be sure to subscribe to get notified when our next episode goes live. Until next time, remember, beef, it's what's for dinner.